What's the stupidest thing you've seen a grown-ass adult get angry over? My nephew is a gymnast, and he is very skilled. I was at one of his compilations award ceremonies to watch his receive medal and saw a mother red face screaming from the crowd at me nephew saying he has won too many times. You should be kicked out to give the other kids a chance. She then went on to scream and swear till she was escorted out by security. I was later told by me nephew that her son came up to him not long after and apologized for his mum's behavior. At the gym and this guy was rotating between 3 machines. 2 of them were side by side and the third was a good 30 feet across the room. A single cycle took at least 20 minutes. I was eyeing one of his machines whilst I squatted. Finally I had nothing else to use, so I asked him if he was done. He looked up from his book, Tom Clancy, and said, "I'm using that." "Okay, wait your turn." Before I can even think to respond, a huge dude asks him if he could work in. The guy immediately smiles and goes, "Oh sure thing my dude," and the big guy gestures for me to use a machine I asked for and left. Dude looked so pissed. I kept thinking he would lean over and hit me with his book. I worked at a bookstore in high school, and every winter we have a book drive and ask customers if they'd like to donate a children's book when they are checking out. Usually people say no, sorry, but one guy would not stop going on and on about how if he wanted to buy a book, he'd just keep it, not donate it. So I replied, "Okay, you don't have to donate," and proceeded to move on in the process and tell him his total, and he just kept circling back to how ridiculous it was that I asked him to donate a $4 book to kids and schools who couldn't afford them, up until the moment he left. He's the only person I ever thought was an asshole for not donating. Edit, just so you'll know, he wouldn't be donating money, he'd be buying a book which I put in a bin and is sent to schools and shelters. A roommate once cursed me out because I asked him to contribute to the house's petty cash fund, which would be used to purchase dish soap and toilet paper. You know, $2 a month for those things we all use. Long story short, this roommate opted out of contributing to the fund. He was asked by our other roommates and me to make his own arrangements. A few months later, our pipes clog and we have to call a plumber. We were in a service call and thankfully didn't foot the bill. Turns out this roommate chose to tear pages out of a book to wipe himself, and that contributed to the clog. A friend once called me, fuming mad, because the person working the drive-thru said, "Welcome to fast food restaurant. Would you like to try our featured item today?" He was furious about it. "Your job is not to tell me what I want. Your job is for me to tell you what I want." He yelled this to me as if he was talking to the employee. The only reason he called me was to bitch about the drive-thru employee. I was like, "Dude, have you never been to a drive-thru before? They almost always do that. And besides, it is part of their job to recommend the featured items to everybody." That employee was almost definitely instructed to do so by their boss and would have gotten in trouble if they didn't. Had a boss who took a trip to the college football championship game. His tickets were like $1,500 each. When he got back, we asked him how his trip went. In a high-pitched whine he said everything sucked because his nachos were cold. One time a lady asked if she could skip me in line, and I said sorry, but I'm on lunch and need to get back. She turned to the person behind her and started saying, "Look at this fucking kid, won't let me cut him in line because he thinks he's more important than I am. Right, I'm sure you have places to be, lady." I wouldn't give him a free refill on his popcorn because we'd closed the stand and thrown it all away already. The security guard had to intervene at one point because he thought the guy was actually going to hit me. My dad is an angry dude, has been to court-ordered anger management a few times, has been kicked out of places a lot of times, so there are way too many instances to list. I'll tell a couple though. Once we were out to eat. Our waitress looked at my baby sister and made a comment about how cute she is. Dad flips the fuck out, started screaming about how he didn't say she could look at his baby. We were asked to leave. Another one that sticks out is on Christmas. My parents are divorced, and the custody order said we had to go back to my mom's house at a certain time. That time rolled around, we reminded our dad, and he starts yelling about how we're dumb cunts. Fun times growing up. I was getting a tire patch which is free at the shop I went to. Another lady behind me in line flipped her lid that her oil change was a whopping 80 cents more than the last time she had been in, an 80-cent increase, and that it had always been that price before. She then insisted, since I wasn't being charged, she shouldn't be either. Even though they were two very different services and mine never had a charge to begin with. They offered her an 80c discount to match her previous price, because I'm not going to argue with you over 80 cents. She took the discount, but was ranting the entire time about preferential treatment etc. Edit, format for attempted clarity. I worked at an auto parts store for a while. We'd get middle-aged dudes who'd get mad at us for not looking for parts that don't exist for their cars, or for simply asking them to clarify what they are working on. It's incredibly disheartening to see a grown-ass man throw a hissy fit all because he doesn't know what kind of car he has. Not having a specific toy, Hatchimals, in stock at the store I work at on Christmas Eve in 2017. We got those fuckers in almost every day, and they sold out within a couple of hours of being opened without fail. This bitch was having a full-on hissy fit because we ruined her daughter's Christmas. No, Tracy, you ruined her Christmas. It's not our fault we don't have any in stock at 5:30 p.m. the day before Christmas, you fucking space cadet. Lady returned her full cart of groceries to the customer service desk because my coworker with a broken arm was the one who rung her groceries up. She said she didn't like people with bandages on touching her groceries. His arm was in a sling which he keeps under his apron. We didn't tell him what happened because we knew he'd get upset. Edit, I know what OCD is. I'm mentally ill, y'all. I get it, she might have had OCD, but she might have not. Stop trying to diagnose a lady you've never met. I answer 911 calls. One day we had a fatal car crash happen and had to reroute traffic from the main road down a side road, then back up to the main road. A woman who lives on the side road called 911 asking why there was commercial traffic passing through her residentially zoned home. I explained there was a serious car accident on the main route, and that as soon as that was resolved, the detour would be removed. She continued to complain, very angrily, that the trucks going by her house were kicking up dust and pebbles into her driveway, and demanded we send someone to clean it for her. I said no, we don't do that. She demanded to speak to a supervisor. I got all her information, then I told her he'd be along to speak to her in person. After he was finished informing the family of the person who died in the car accident that their family member was dead, then I hung up the phone. When the sergeant got there, she refused to come to the door and refused to answer the phone when we called her back. A longtime parishioner made a scene before the morning service when she spotted a family sitting in her pew. As I noted some time ago, she insisted that the family move or that she leave the church and take her substantial pledge with her. To their credit, the family, newcomers to the church, didn't move and the woman left in a huff, much like a child having a tantrum. Friend of mine got seriously hurt off a 50+ foot ski jump trying to avoid this 6-year-old girl hanging out in the blind landing. My friend is on the ground crying with his broken leg and ribs, and the father of this girl had the audacity to go stand over him and start screaming at him about how he cold killed his daughter. The 6-year-old hanging out in a blind spot where professional athletes were training. The mass of the park surrounded this guy quickly and told him they better never see him in a terrain park teaching his daughter how to ski on the landings of massive jumps, and proceeded to escort him and his daughter down the mountain. Fucking idiot almost got his daughter killed, permanently injured my friend, and then decided to come scream at an injured person who just hurt themselves to save his daughter's life. Once had a woman send her two 5 to 8 years old kids into the pop-up Halloween store I worked at with her debit card so they could buy whatever they wanted. The son of course immediately has no idea where the debit card is. Calls his mom. Mom comes flying into the store literally screaming at the top of her lungs that I specifically must have stolen it because I was both the floor supervisor and cashier at the time. Told her there were cameras pointed at each register and I hadn't moved from my station for over half an hour, but I would help her look for it. She didn't believe me and called the cops on me because it was now an accusation of employee theft. Even though I was the only one accused, none of the employees were allowed to leave the building. It took the police 20 minutes to show up, way past closing. We were all miserable, and we just wanted to go home. All I could do was apologize profusely. We couldn't even stand outside, because she was there, standing directly in front of the doors, staring through the glass at us with unbridled fury. A single cop finally showed up, and she already looked fed up. She took all our statements, looked over the CCTV, told the woman to deactivate her card, and go to the bank in the morning. The woman finally left, threatening me the entire time, and the cop hung out with us for a couple minutes shooting the shit, and making fun of the whole situation. Real chill lady. 10 minutes later, as the cop is scooping up her paperwork, the phone rings and my coworker answers. It's the woman. She found her card. It was on her kitchen table. She forgot to give it to her son. She tried to ruin a young 20-something's life because she refused to believe she could be so careless with her own money and didn't even think to check her own house first. She never apologized. Bitch. An old boss of mine couldn't open his Kit Kat wrapper, and so he headbutted a wall in anger. This was a large office. Edit. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. PPLR saying there is more to this. There is. The guy had real rage issues. One time I witnessed him screaming down the phone at someone because it was a wrong number. A wrong number he had actually called. I haven't seen him in 7 years, but last year he made the local paper because he'd be caught by Dark Justice, UK pedo hunters, trying to solicit sex off a 14 years old girl.